in terms of what the Ministry of Defence have said, they've said that he was helping to test some equipment, a new weapon for the Ukrainians. I was told last night that the test basically went badly wrong. Someone suggested to me it involved something to do with an explosion or ammunition, but they weren't quite firm on those details.
The Prime Minister has named the British soldier who died in Ukraine yesterday.
The whole House will join me in sending our deepest sympathy and condolences to the family and loved ones of Lance Corporal George Hooley of the Parachute Regiment, who died yesterday in Ukraine. Lance Corporal Hooley was injured in a tragic accident away from the front lines while observing Ukrainian forces testing a new defensive capability. His life was full of courage and determination. He served our country with honour and distinction around the world in the cause of freedom and democracy, including as part of the small number of British personnel in Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, I place his name on record today to express our gratitude and respect and to affirm that his service will never be forgotten.
The Prime Minister speaking in the House of Commons a little earlier. Now, Louisa Brown is here with us. Welcome to you, Louisa.
Thank you.
So, I mean, you will have a lot of knowledge of this as Times Defence editor. It seems even the presence of members of the Parachute Regiment in Ukraine has not been disclosed before. What do we know? What's actually been publicly said about what this soldier was doing there?
Well, in terms of what the Ministry of Defence have said, they've said that he was helping to test some equipment, a new weapon for the Ukrainians. I was told last night that the test basically went badly wrong. Someone suggested to me it involved something to do with an explosion or ammunition, but they weren't quite firm on those details. And today, I had it confirmed that they were working on an air defence system of some sort, but nobody has gone into the details on what exactly that was. I do know that the UK has been helping the Ukrainians as part of a project called Project Octopus, and that's to help produce these interceptor drones, which are designed to shoot down Russian drones in the skies. It's possible it could be part of that programme, but I haven't got that confirmed.
Yeah, and the fact that if information is scarce is very easy, I guess, to understand. I mean, we have known, it's been pretty commonly known that there have been British military personnel in Ukraine for a while now. Not much has been said about what they're doing there. I can recall talk of medical personnel helping with that sort of training and maybe other training roles. So look, given we don't know, given we can't disclose what should not be disclosed because we don't have that information, what is the expert assumption about what British soldiers may be doing there?
Well, as you say, we know that British Special Forces have been operating in the country. So we know that there is a presence of Special Forces, but the government won't confirm or deny
and what
that.
sort of work is it conceivable they might be doing?
You're testing me, John, because I'm not sure what I can say and what I can't.
Yeah.
I think there's a presence of Special Forces carrying out various activities there. And there's medics. There's a small team of medics, which the government has confirmed.
Yes.
And there's also in the past been some reports of troops in the country helping to train on equipment. And perhaps this is a case of that. Now, what I hadn't heard before is members of the Parachute Regiment being inside Ukraine. Now, they're not Special Forces. And so I found that quite interesting today that they are in the country. And I think a lot of people will be asking those questions like, well, what are they doing then exactly? Given that the Parachute Regiment, it's a conventional unit. It's not like Special Forces where the government can say, well, we were not going to tell you anything about it. So I did find that quite surprising. Right.
I mean, I completely understand your hesitation, believe me. And I know it can be tricky to have more knowledge than you can possibly disclose. It makes conversations like this a little bit awkward sometimes. But I totally understand. And thanks again for coming in, Larisa.
No problem.
Maybe I can talk now to John Foreman. I think he's on the line, a former British Defence attaché in Moscow and in Kyiv. Hello to you, John.
Hello, John.
What are your thoughts on what you've been hearing?
Well, first I'd like to express my condolences to the family and friends of Lance Corporal Hooley. He comes from the Parachute Regiment. It's an elite unit, the elite regiment with a proud history of selfless sacrifice and service to the country. But it's also a reminder, I think, that military service is not without risk. We had a seaman from the Royal British Auxiliary washed over the side of a ship back in November, and it says, unfortunately, these things happen. I think Larisa was quite right. I think we've had a long, proud history of supporting the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian Ministry of Defence. When I was there 15 years ago, we helped them with training, with exercises and advice, both at the political level and the military level. And that expanded after the annexation of Crimea, and has continued since. I see what's been going on since 2022 as part of that pattern overall.
Right. Now, my strong guess is, John, that you know rather more about these matters than you can properly discuss on the air with me this afternoon. But we are talking about an area of military activity which, quite apart from being perhaps militarily difficult, is also in diplomatic terms incredibly sensitive as well. I mean, we have lost a soldier who was helping the Ukrainians in Ukraine. Any kind of operation gets us close to the point of some sort of very difficult, awkward diplomatic incident, doesn't it?
Yes, of course, Russia's always been trying to portray the UK armed forces as co-belligerents with Ukraine in the fight, the war since 2022, and I think that's obviously a lie. But Russia has issued threats to UK and other NATO personnel inside Ukraine since the invasion started. And I think, although there's been leaks about presence of UK forces and other forces in there, the government's been quite right to make sure that operational security is being maintained. And as the Prime Minister said, he could acknowledge there's a small number of troops, UK personnel in Ukraine, but not go into any detail. And when I was in Moscow, I didn't ask the question because I didn't want to know. I didn't need to know the question.
Yes.
And the answer, because in case in the future I'm on the show with John Pino and he asked me a difficult question. But I think we can say that Larisa is on the money, really. And I think it's not just about the medical support or perhaps support to the protection of UK diplomats and any visitors, such as Defence Secretary or Prime Minister when they go to Ukraine. It's also supporting Ukraine's sovereign right to defend itself, whether that's on land, sea and air. And I think that's probably where you should be looking.
Yeah, well, I mean, that might be a pretty widespread assumption. We've just heard of the sad death of a British serviceman and the capture of a British military member of the armed forces. That would also be a diplomatic disaster in some ways, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the Russians have lied about this since the beginning of the war. They've lied that British officers have been captured. They've lied about killing US and Italian generals. They've lied about hitting training sites where British personnel have been operating. So I think I've set aside the Russian spin. I mean, the UK has been quite clear that we support Ukraine's right to defend itself, and it's Ukraine's sovereign right to ask their allies and partners to help them. And I think that's what we've been doing for the last 3 years, almost 4 years now. And I think that's what Lance Corporal Hooley was doing. I mean, I think on his actual unit is not particularly of significance. I mean, we know that the 1st Battalion of the Parachute Regiment forms part of a thing called the Special Forces Support Group, which supports Special Forces. And I think the government's quite right not to confirm or deny the activities of anybody in that area to keep them safe.
All right, John Foreman, the former British Defence Attaché in Moscow and in Kyiv, thank you so much.